is at a crossroads. In his opening remarks, he acknowledged the hardships Ghanaians are facing, the rising cost of living, a struggling private sector, and an economy weighed down by debt. But he also delivered a stark reminder that we cannot keep doing things and expect different results when we do them the same way. For 2 days, policymakers, business leaders, and economic experts wrestled with one key question: how do we finally break the cycle of boom and bust that has defined the Ghanaian economy? The question now is, did they find a way? I am Keminni Amanor, and in this edition, I sit with the chairman of the National Economic Dialogue to break down what was discussed behind closed doors, what changes we can expect realistically, and how this dialogue will move beyond just talk to real transformation. My next guest is Dr. Ishmael Evans-Yamson. You're welcome to Hot Tissues.
Thank you very much.
You have just concluded the National Economic Dialogue, where you assess the country as it is now and offered solutions as well. From your discussions, what would you say is the biggest risk to this country and why we find ourselves where we are?
Well, I think if you want one word, it's corruption, because it drives everything in this country. And I can say with certainty that unless and until we fought the menace called corruption, we are going nowhere as a country.
I see.
And I have lived through all the governments of this country, luckily. I saw a little bit of the colonial administration, but Nkrumah's government, all the military regimes, I've seen every one of them. And if you go back, when each government, every single one of them leaves office, the accusation is economic mismanagement and corruption. And of course, the economic mismanagement is fed by the corruption.
How?
Well, it's very simple. You have to take decisions about the economy. And if you are very faithful to the country, then every decision you take, you put the country first. That's not what has been our experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't be complaining every day about agreements that were signed, which were not in favor of this country, people becoming very rich within a few years of being in politics. It drives everything. I mean, this morning I was playing golf and a gentleman walked to me and said, I was happy with your candid views. And I said, what did I say? He said, yes, corruption is what is killing us. So we shouldn't run away from it. It's a fact. And we should confront it.
Right.
That's why one would break out sessions focused on governance and eliminating corruption.
Indeed, and you proposed some solutions to tackling corruption and governance reforms.
We have not finalized them yet, but yes, they did. The breakout session came back with some solutions.
One of those from the communique called for constitutional reforms and strengthening our institutions.
Yes.
I want to understand, when the communique makes a call such as that, we know that, the president has already set up the CRC, hoping that we could review certain aspects of the constitution. But in relation to corruption, which will feed into our economic growth, what exactly was the communique hoping to communicate, so to speak, in terms of reforms of the constitution?
Well, you see, I have said many times that if you look at our corruption problems, their roots are in the Constitution. If you give one person the power literally to appoint every public official, right? That person with enormous authority, okay?
Right.
And if that person hasn't got a nationalist mindset, then his appointments are not going to be reflected by what is required to do the job. This is talking about having lost the sense of meritocracy. Appointing people who merit to be in certain positions. And they are driven by party interest, by personal interest. And that's where the problem starts. Because leadership, for me, is everything. If you can set up two companies, one led by a good leader with a good team, a similar company led by a bad leader with a bad team, and you will see the difference in no time. So for me, the Constitution needs checks and balances strong enough to ensure that even though the president will have the power to, and it's one example only,
right,
to appoint everybody, there are checks and balances to ensure that those people's backgrounds have been clearly checked, that we are very sure. And even the president himself should be sure that the people that he's appointing are people who share his values, his principles, his behavior, and not because he contributed to the election, right, or he comes from this area, and therefore, if we don't appoint him, we lose votes, or people will leave our party and the rest of it. Those considerations must not take precedence over the merit that you require to do a job. Why is it that we see in Africa many successful businesses, but we see many failed countries in Africa? The difference is in the leadership of those in the corporate world and those
in the public sector.
Exactly. It's as simple as that.
Which is why the communique is calling for matching public sector employment with productivity.
Yes.
But again, it's a subject that we have broached in this country for a very long time.
Yes.
How can the government achieve that in the public sector?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, I always see performance contracts signed by SOEs with government.
Right.
And the SOEs end up piling debt upon debt upon debt upon debt. And I always say, so what is the accountability for? Telling me that you deliver this and in the end you deliver something very different, right? So the public sector must not just, and I hear all the time about improving terms and conditions of service. You hardly hear about improving productivity. But you must create the wealth before you can share. If you don't create it, you can't share. Look, when I was chairman of Unilever, we used to put on the notice board our performance month by month. So everybody in the company knew what the company was delivering or the company wasn't delivering. Section by section, production unit by production unit. So I'm not coming to tell you that you are not delivering. So you don't deserve, to be rewarded for it. So in the public sector, we negotiate terms and conditions. We negotiate salaries. If you go to private sector, it's the reverse. We reward performance. Right? You may have your terms and conditions stipulated, but when it comes to your remuneration, it will be clearly stated that it will be based on your performance.
So could unionization then be the problem? Because we have the single spine, we have organized labor on the other hand. Whether I'm performing or not, once I'm on the single spine and I'm in organized labor, when the base pay goes up, my salary goes up. It doesn't matter if I performed.
No, well, I don't think the unionization is the problem. It's how we manage the whole reward system. You can unionize, but if on both sides we know that unless we create X value, nobody in the business, I can tell you that, again from my experience in the private sector, you may have the agreement, but when it comes to your bonus or your reward, your basic salary is your basic salary. You won't get anything, zero. Why? Because you didn't deliver. Now, if you do that twice or thrice in the public sector, everybody will go on strike. And I said, no, but you can't do that because if you have not performed, and you see, the dangerous part of it is that because the reward system is for everybody, what that means is that whether I perform or I don't perform, I will be rewarded the same way. So why should I bother myself to come to work early morning and stay and maybe late in the night?
Is it impossible to change that? It
is not. Why is it impossible? It's not, it is very possible to change it. I've talked about changing our mindset. And see, when we talk about reset, everybody Ghanaian thinks that the reset is only the government and the politicians. No, the reset must be throughout the way we do things in this country. We must reward performance. Ghana, we have entitlement mentality. I've been here for 10 years, so I should be promoted. Who told you that because you have been here for 10 years, you should be promoted? 10 years of delivering poor performance, you should be promoted. It doesn't make sense. See, so it is possible. If you go to European countries, go to America, the best country actually is Canada. And if you look at the Canadian public service, it's one of the most efficient because it's not about signing an agreement that my terms and conditions are this, right? It's about your performance as an individual. And let me tell you, we have your reward at the end of the year will be based on three things. Your individual performance, because at the beginning of the year, you would have agreed your own targets and you as an individual. Then you have a team, because in every sector you have a team of people who are working together, say in foods, so they have a target. It's a weighted target. Then you have the delivery by the whole company. So if the whole company loses money, why should you say that even though you have performed very well, because the whole company has lost money, you should not be recognized? You should be recognized. They may not be as big as if the whole company had delivered. So the concept is there. It's not something that we need to discover it.
So the concept is there, but is the political will there for governments that come and, for the purpose of our conversation, the current government to be able to do what you apply the good corporate governance you have just, explained?
Everybody in Ghana blames everything on political will. I hear it all the time, everywhere. And the political will always says, will the president be prepared to do this? Will the cabinet be prepared to do this? But are we also prepared as citizens to understand that going that way, we will not make the progress we want? It must be a debate that we should have, all right? We must have a discussion, we must have and that's why I like this dialogue. The people who came there were they didn't come there because they were NDC or NPP or they were from a village or they were from Ashanti or from, no. And I can tell you the passion with which people attended that dialogue and participated overwhelmed me. Because everybody is tired of the mess that we have been through for 68 years. Subtract from Nkrumah's 9 years. The rest of it, right? Everybody's tired now. So that's why I say this is the time. The moment is now. If we miss this opportunity, we miss it forever. Because every one of us sitting here is tired of being poor and being, are you not tired? Everybody's tired. So if we know what we should do, it may be painful. It may not be easy to do it, but we should make a start. This whole mentality of, I've been here 20 years, I've not been promoted. My question was, during the 20 years, what were you doing? Right? If you can tell me that during the 20 years you were outperforming everybody, and yet you were not recognized, I'll buy your case.
We can look at that. And we can look at that. As part of the measures outlined in the communique to tackle corruption and, implement some good governance reforms, you mentioned developing a framework for political party financing transparency. How does it connect to our economic growth?
Well, but look, I worry a lot about the situation of politics in Ghana today. And I worry because CCDD published a report, I think 2 years ago. It was launched at the UPSA. And they discovered that the money that is funding political party elections is dirty, black money. Right?
In Ghana?
In Ghana, yes. You can read the report. So, if now your future, my future, is in the hands of people who, for some reason, have found money to fund a political party, so they have a hold on this political party, what will happen after the election? They then determine policy. Yeah? And if we go to Latin America, most of their problems are from there. Drug barons capture whole countries. Right? So it's dangerous for us. Political parties are unable to get subscriptions for their, from their members. Why they fail to do that, I don't know. Because suddenly during election, everybody is passionate about their party. But have they paid their subscription for the past 8 years or 4 years? The answer in the most cases will be no. So that's why you see in Ghana, every 4 years, the party in power has so much money to spend. The party in opposition has less money to spend. But at least on 2 occasions, Ghanaians have demonstrated that you can have all of the money. And when we go to the booth, we will take the decision ourselves. I said recently, if it was about money, NDC would not have won the election. Right? So it's a dangerous development that political party funding is now getting into the hands of people who have access to dirty money. And it is dangerous. Because what happens? No, they take hold of government, literally.
Right.
Like it happened in South Africa, where they had the state capture. So some 3 Indian folks were even appointing ministers. If you were to become a minister, you have to go and see them. And I can tell you it can happen here if we don't stop it.
But we also have the regulation that obliges the political parties to declare their accounts to the Electoral Commission. What difference should we do then?
Yeah,
because
but you are a journalist. When was the last time that the political parties lodged their audited accounts?
I mean, when you asked the Electoral Commissioner, and we did during the 2024 elections.
So that all of us could read and see it. It should be transparent. If they had their audited accounts, why should it be secret? Every company on the stock exchange, they publish their accounts because they are accountable to their shareholders. Why shouldn't the political parties publish their accounts? Because they are accountable to us, the voters. Why should it be a secret? Why should it be? So I don't know what the provision is in the Constitution. But then, if the Constitutional Review takes a look and the provision is not for it to be published,
yes,
we should say it should be published. So all of us can see. So when you have suddenly 400 billboards, we'll ask you, where did you find the money to put out the 400 billboards? Right? Suddenly, I mean, I was amazed how many billboards popped up everywhere. And I know the cost of one billboard. And I know that you have to rent it for a minimum of 3 months. So I did the multiplication. I said, so where did all this money come from? Suddenly. So we have to take it seriously. Political party funding, particularly election funding.
Years.
And they had statistics for, if you want to become DC, how much you will spend. Right. If you have to become a MCE or whatever, how much you will spend. If you want to go to Parliament, if you want to be president. And so you ask yourself, so where would they find all this money? Where would they all find this money? And so it's an issue that, because it drives corruption.
Right. The last thing I want us to look at on the subject of corruption and governance reforms is the oversight of Parliament, which the communique also touches on. You do not expect Parliament to be a rubber stamp, no. But we have what has now been christened the supermajority. Yeah. I mean, what confidence do you have that we will not have what you are hoping to avoid, at least for the next 4 years?
You see, and that is what makes the huge difference. You know, if you look at America, if you look at Britain, if you look at Germany, you know, Joe Biden's greatest critic was not from the Republican, was from his own party members. So, one of the mindsets that we need to reset is that when people go to Parliament, they should go and serve their constituents. No British parliamentarian will go and take a vote in Parliament without first going to talk to his or her constituents. Here, the party decides and everybody falls in line. They also have party whips or whatever. But they will make decisions based on the interest of their constituents and the interest of the country. So it doesn't matter what majority you have. You will still have people in your own party voting against you. If it happens in Ghana once, twice, the person will be an enemy of his own party, right? So the point is that it's the way we are interpreting politics, right, and the way we are interpreting democracy. People, and the president says something that I repeat, I've repeated many times. We have lost the love of country in this country. We don't love Ghana anymore. When I was a young man growing up, I knew myself as a Ghanaian, simple, short. And I loved being a Ghanaian. Today, if you look at it, the first distribution was the NDC or NPP. Then to come to regions, the tribes. Wow, how did we get here? And why are we not concerned about putting our country first before everything else, so that even if your own minister of your own party brings something on the floor which you know is wrong, you should stand up and say it is wrong. And be prepared to speak for the people of Ghana. Unless we rediscover that, unless we reset that mindset, and I go to Parliament, I'm an NPP president. Whether it is wrong or right, I will vote for it. And we have seen this many, many, many times. And it goes all the whole thing through the public sector. And I think that we need to come to a point where we say, American politicians will fight. When it comes to American interests, they are one. Right. British politicians will fight. When it comes to British interests, they are one.
Do you see that with...
Do we have anything called Ghana interest? I'm asking you, do we have anything called Ghana interest? No. But we might discover it because it was there in Nkrumah's time. Why is it not there today? Were we not the same people? Were we not the same Ghanaians during Nkrumah's time that we sang about Ghana, we loved Ghana? When the Black Stars are playing, today, if the Black Stars are playing, people who are not, in government pray that they lose. Because if they win, they shine. It will be to the advantage of the ruling party, even the Black Stars.
I mean, so because we don't know what the Ghana interest is, could that be the reason why sometimes Parliament looks as though it's doing things in favor?
They know. They know what the Ghana
interest is. They know what the Ghana interest is.
Of course they know. Why don't they know? They know. They know what the Ghana interest is. But only few, I don't know if I've heard anybody, but
Extreme partisanship?
It took when the 90-something or so NPP parliamentarians stood up and said, Mr. President, remove the finance minister. And the Mr. President refused. What did they do? They buckled. But they should have stood their ground. Because everything that the finance minister was doing was not only against the interests of the country, but also against the interests of their own party. And that's why they lost this election so heavily. We've never seen this kind of loss any time in our history. So we should be bold, we should be honest, we should be patriotic. And that when it we are going to sign an agreement with a foreign company. Your primary consideration must not be how much you are going to get out of it. It must be whether it will be beneficial to Ghana and the people of Ghana. If we can get to that stage, and I'm saying it is not difficult, because today Ghanaians have demonstrated that if you do otherwise, they'll go to the polls and they will show you that the thumb is powerful indeed.
Right, indeed. Doc, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wind down the conversation of state-owned enterprises, because there are aspects where the communique makes suggestions for privatization. I want us to touch on that when we come back. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're still watching Hot Issues. My guest is Dr. Ishmael Yamson, the chairman of the recently concluded National Economic Dialogue. Doc, I appreciate you talking to us and your patience. But while we're on the subject of public sector reforms, let's talk about state-owned enterprises, because it would seem that the communique touched passionately on SOEs. The first one being ECG. The communique's interests were in energy and Cocobod. Why?
Well, you saw the figures. right? Only last year, Cocobod lost $2.2 billion. How much did we go to IMF to borrow? $3 billion. And over 3 years. So assuming Cocobod didn't lose $2.2 billion, would we need to go and borrow $3 billion? No. It's as critical as that. And it's been going on for a very, very long time. Nkrumah set up SOEs for a very good purpose.
Right.
Because, first of all, most of the Western investors were not very keen. Because this is a socialist state, they thought he was a communist, he would see the assets. Nkrumah was never like that. Indeed, in Nkrumah's time, the private sector flourished better. But SOEs have lost money year after year after year. They will tell you political interference. But it boils down to bad governance, right? And again, go back to my point about meritocracy.
Right.
So you have a chairman, you appoint a chairman, not based on merit, but based on political affiliation. You appoint a CEO, not based on merit, but political affiliation. So they come, and they don't come with a vision to say, okay, we lost money for 9 years. I'm going to task myself that in my 4 years being here, we would go back to black. What they do, they continue the loss making. Because every time they make a loss, the government bails them out. Okay. Why? If you go back 10 years ago, we were producing more cocoa than Côte d'Ivoire. Today, last year, Côte d'Ivoire shipped 2.2 million tons of cocoa. Ghana shipped less than 500,000 tons. Ask me why. Why should we be? The same climatic conditions. So, is the policy, is the management, is the governance, is the political interference, all of them put together. I mean, since when did the Kwashi bring cocoa to Ghana? So when we want to buy cocoa, we have to go and borrow money before we buy cocoa.
We buy it.
And what I heard that actually made me cry was we borrowed the money and we couldn't even supply the cocoa. So this year, 300,000 tons of cocoa that we will harvest has already been sold at a lower price. So for every ton of cocoa we said, we'll lose $4,000. And so where is the accountability? What are those people who put us in that place? Who is going to hold them accountable?
Someone should be holding them accountable.
Not someone. We should hold them accountable. When we say, oh, political witch hunting, it's not a political witch hunting. You've come and raped this country. Come and explain to the people of Ghana. Right? So why should you forward sell the cocoa? When do you know? Even a child knows that cocoa price was on the rise. What was the speed with which you want to forward sale? And then now you put us in debt. So 300,000 tons of cocoa we sell this year. We will not only have any benefit from it, we will lose money.
We'll lose money. We'll lose money.
And meanwhile, those people, we were talking about terms and conditions of service. They have been paid very well. I'm sure they all are driving big cars, very comfortable people. They're not even ashamed of it. And I think that until we begin to hold people accountable, now let me come back to the question you asked about privatization. First of all, Ghanaians are passionate about state assets. My basic English language, an asset that loses money is not an asset.
Not an asset.
It cannot be, right? So when we all sit around and say, oh, we are going to privatize the distribution. Oh, we can't do it because, oh, we PDS and blah, blah. I say, yes. Maybe PDS went wrong, but it doesn't mean that we cannot do it right. Right? So we have a choice to sit around SOEs. You saw the chart. All those SOEs, only 2 make profit. 2. All the rest of them make losses for us. to pay as a people. Meanwhile, my sisters and my grandchildren in my village are suffering. They are cocoa farmers because we can't even pay them the right price. Right. Today, cocoa price is 13,000 tons, $13,000 per ton. The man's time was just less than $400 a ton. So if you are getting 13,000 tons, what business do you have to go and borrow money in the first place? And what business do you have to sell forward to lose money? And then you have gone comfortably sitting in your home. Nobody is saying anything. And therefore I'm saying, Cocobod, Côte d'Ivoire doesn't have Cocobod. Right. And yet they can produce 2.2 million tons. So does Cocobod deliver value to Ghanaians at all? And do we need them at all in the first instance?
What do you think?
If you ask me, my private sector instance tells me that get rid of Cocobod. The formula is there, right? If you go to Malaysia, they produce almost 20 million tons of palm oil. Right? They have Malaysia oil board, but it's a policy board. They don't get involved in selling palm oil to anybody. Well, palm oil is owned by private people.
So, I mean, is that why the communiqué recommends that Cocobod be placed under the Ministry of Finance again? Well, will this solve anything at all?
Well, I think that it is because the Ministry of Finance has responsibility for Cocobod. But I think that we need to interrogate, and I just said to you that, yes, we have received all the recommendations. We are now interrogating the recommendations, and then we will make the final presentation to the president. But I'm saying that, I mean, why? When you go to buy fuel, do you credit the fuel you buy?
No.
So why are we always in debt? Right? And then they come and tell us, oh, the IPP, their cost of production is very high. Who signed the agreement? Who signed the agreement? So if their cost of production is so competitive by global standards, does it mean that we cannot do anything about it? Why should we sit by? And then every now and then they say, oh, you owe us 1.7 billion. If you don't pay, we shut down. So I'm saying we need to be bold enough. We need to examine what we have been doing in the past. That is why I love this president's reset agenda. And it's not just about politics. It's about everything we do in this country.
But let me tap into your private sector mind again. If your private sector mind says that Cocobod is not serving a purpose as of today.
It's serving a bad purpose.
It's serving a bad purpose now.
Yes.
What do you think about government's intention to set up Gold Board?
No, but the Gold Board, I have seen the framework.
Okay.
If they carry it through, it will serve a better. But you see, we have had a free environment for gold, and the finance minister, I'm sure, will tell you how much money, how much dollars we lost last year alone from gold smuggling. So we have one board that will oversee the framework. I'm not sure whether it will mean only one board will buy the gold, because we have already existing agreements with the major gold producers. I don't know how it will work. But what I have heard and seen will serve the Ghana's interest. Let me tell you that Cocobod, if they had been transparent, if they had had integrity, people of integrity managing Cocobod, if we didn't have the political interference, if we had the right people managing Cocobod, I am sure that Cocobod would have served a good purpose today. Right? Because Nkrumah set up Cocobod not to come and lose money. If you go back and read the Severe Development Plan, Cocobod had the strategic, because don't forget, at that time, about 70% of our commercial crop was cocoa. And we needed to protect the cocoa farmer. And that's hence Cocobod. The Cocobod was there to work in the interest of the farmers. Now, Cocobod doesn't work to the interest of the farmers any longer. You just do the calculation, $13,000 per ton. Why don't we pay the cocoa farmer 60% of the 13,000 tons? Why? Why should cocoa marketing keep majority of the money?
So we should check our pricing model.
Of course.
As well. Now they say it's about 63%.
From where?
For the farmers,
I haven't heard that.
Oh, I see.
So
that's what I
don't know
hear.
how they did their calculation. Well, 63% minus cost or 30% of the world market price, I don't know. I can tell you, I have no idea. But what I know is that
we have to increase the farm gates.
The farmer is not getting the price. But why should the farmers sell their cocoa to Cote d'Ivoire? Just answer me. Sure. Because they get a better price.
Better price, indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. So just one more on ECG's privatization. What the communique says is very, it's in tandem with what the government plans to do. I've also heard that from certain quarters. It may be a coincidence or it could be that perhaps that is the solution to the problem we have at hand. But you mentioned PDS earlier. The Ghanaian people will want to know what we are hoping to do with the partial privatization of ECG will prevent another PDS type of scandal. What can we do to do that?
Let me be honest with you. I don't have all the details of PDS. I don't want to guess anything. But PDS was a disaster. I don't have the details. I'm sure that before government decides finally, and I am 100% in support of privatizing the distribution, the energy distribution, the downstream. I am 100% support. Because did you see the figures of the leakage alone, revenue leakage alone? It won't happen in any private company. You will survive. But it happens every day, right? People will tell you, no, we can't get, and one of the things that I always laugh about is when they say, because the tariff is low. They don't talk about their inefficiencies. Because the tariff is not high enough to cover all their mess. So they say it is low. It is not low. If they were in a private sector, the private would say, reduce your cost of production by 10% by every year for the next 5 years. They will now suddenly realize that the tariff is no longer low. But I'm saying that we have played, and I know everybody should understand. Even I remember at that time, the workers in ECG, but not very much in favor of privatization. But one day, ECG will come to a standstill and there will be no jobs, whether you like it or not. Because you will be so much in debt, nobody will lend you money. And you will simply collapse. So,
if we don't privatize now to plug the leakage.
If privatization is the answer, then we should do it.
Is it the answer?
But it is. It is. Because the government themselves admit that that part of the energy
the billing,
will be better done by the private sector. The private sector people, when they invest their money, they don't joke with it. If anyone sitting here has invested 10 cedis, is that why Ghanaians were up in arms when the government took our money and they said, you lent us money, but we won't pay. If we will pay, we extend the period to 30 years. Interest, we have reduced it. Yeah, that was not the contract that I entered with you. Then me, poor retired man, all my money I had saved to look after myself in retirement, you mess me up like that. No, the world doesn't work like that.
The communique talks about expanding the tax base, a conversation that we've been having in this country forever. It also talks about addressing revenue leakage, one that we've just spoken about in the power distribution or retail sector. And then revising VAT. Let's start off with revising VAT. What is the communique hoping that the government does with the VAT? Is it not high enough already?
The 50% VAT is not unusual at all. It's not unusual. Maybe it is the application, because those people who assemble, they are all experts. So, but the issue of expanding the base,
Right.
I think that nobody will argue the question that the few ones that are paying the taxes are the very ones that will go back and that. I give an example where one of the companies that I chair, at one time, there were 12 GRA audits, trying to find something so they can make money. And I said, but are they criminals? Why? So what time would they have to work for them to make money, for you to tax the money? So we need to expand the base. And they did talk about the real estate, right? Look at all the huge high-rise buildings in Accra. Are you very sure that those people are paid all their taxes before they put up those houses? I'm not sure about that. In any case, after putting them up, either they sell them or they rent them.
Right.
Did we get the rent from the rent tax from them? Or when they sold it, did we get whatever tax they had to pay? And there are many. If you go to Accra, and it's not only here, go to Kumasi. So there are people who are making money but who are not paying taxes. And it is a truism. We can't run away from it. So we need to expand the tax base. So if you go to Rwanda, right, you can't buy anything with cash. Everything is by Momo. The government captures every commercial enterprise. They capture your revenue. Once you go above the threshold, you pay tax. Ghana, no. There are people sitting in Makola who are making money than you are making. You pay tax, but they don't pay tax, right? Yeah. So everybody in Ghana claims to be poor, so they don't have to be paid tax. If you go to SMEs, they don't even file tax returns, right?
But so then you see this will work.
You go through a street which I will not name. Nobody issues VAT invoice. So those are the things that the committee is talking about. Now there are many people who should be paying taxes, doing genuine business, but are refusing to pay their share of tax.
Right.
And only the few in the formal sector
are paying the taxes.
And
they need to bring everybody in.
Yes.
I just want to acknowledge that the previous administration also said the same thing. When you look at the numbers, it would appear that the Ghana Revenue Authority under the previous administration couldn't do much about the same problem. Yes. And we have another government that we are asking to do the same thing, yes, bring in the people. In fact, yes, back in John Mahama one administration, yes, he also had the same challenge to surmount, yes, and he couldn't surmount that problem.
Yes.
So until we are able to do that, in the short term, the government will have to raise revenue. Yes. Should the Ghanaian people expect the government to increase taxes, introduce new taxes? They are forgiving certain taxes, they will still need money to plug in somewhere else until we get to the point where we are able to draw in a chunk of the informal sector like you have described into the tax net.
You know, there are two sides to balancing a budget. There's a revenue side and there's the expenditure side. We always talk about the revenue side. We always forget about the expenditure side. Yes. One way of balancing your budget is also to cut your costs. And I'm telling you, the cost of doing government business in Ghana is simply too high. Only in the recent past, we had over 100 ministers, right? Did we need over 100 ministers? Now we say 60, right? So, is the 60 truly the number we need? But let's assume that for now we need 60. You see the cost saving, right? And if you go, Dr. Nemo Thompson demonstrated something at the dialogue, where simply registering a loudspeaker. So he had brought.
Yeah. He had imported it from South Africa.
in South Africa would have taken 15 minutes. In Ghana, it took 2 months with 18 pages of paper.
Bureaucracy.
Of paper. And each page, each single sheet of paper was paid for. Just multiply that. So the bureaucracy is costly. And we should sit back and say, do we need this? I mean, how many people in Limga? 32 million people. That's all. You go to Microsoft, go to Unilever, and how many people sit at the very top of that business? You will find there are no more than 8. And they have a turnover of $600 billion. What is Ghana's GDP? $70-something billion. 70-something billion. Look at people who are managing 70 billion as against people who manage $600 billion. There's something wrong somewhere. We should speed up digitizing government because that will take the human intervention that promotes corruption, right? And also reduce the numbers because we have far too many people. I mean, every government that comes has today, government payroll.
Right.
That's true.
So wage bill sustainability is a problem.
Yes.
Should we downsize?
Of course. Why shouldn't we?
So the government should be firing some people?
No, you don't start just go and fire people.
Okay.
Right? And that is where the difference comes. First of all, you have to determine the needs of government. And then say, this is what we need to manage government. How many people do we need for what we need to manage government? What kind of skills do we need? What professionalism do we need? So you walk backwards. So we call it process and systems. You study it. I'll give you an example. When I was in Unilever, we did a simple test. From the time a customer places an order to the time we get our money back, we found out that there were 16 human interventions, and we needed only 4. When we scrapped the 12, our sales doubled. Doing nothing.
Right.
Yes. So, if you go to government, you'll find out that we have added regulations upon regulations. Every government can add to it. We never scrap the old ones we are replacing. We leave them there.
And add on.
An add-on. So the bureaucracy get bloated upon bloated. So what I'm saying is,
but considering that public sector employment reforms, especially, are heavily politicized, it sounds like an impossible task to downsize beyond ministerial appointments.
Yes, but I've told you that if we begin to put Ghana first, then that ceases to be a problem. But you don't just go and throw people into the street. You can grow the economy so that you have room to absorb the people. We've done it in this country before. And that's why we talk about private sector-led growth. Because the private sector has abundant capacity to grow and absorb these people. Look, I'll give you one example. If you put 100,000 hectares of oil palm under cultivation, right? 100,000 hectares of oil palm. For every hectare initially, you need 4 people. So you need 400,000 people. Say in the central region. Would you find 400,000 people immediately? You wouldn't. They will be short of labor. So the avenue, but the government doesn't have money to establish 100,000 hectares. But the private sector has the money. And they need it, and they will do it. And they want to come. But then we have problems with getting the land. So we now have to look at our problem, the whole chain, because we have to debottleneck a lot of things before we can get most of these things right. So nobody suggests that tomorrow go and throw people in the street. Nobody would dream doing that.
But the government has done that already. The people who were employed on the 6th and 7th.
Well, yeah, but how can we employ people when we have 3 months to leave office and employ 300,000 people? Will you do that?
That's wrong, isn't it?
But it is absolutely wrong. But the people themselves who are being employed, do they have integrity? They should themselves have known that what their government was doing was illegal.
Well, they need a job. And they were offered some.
Oh, okay, then we all suffer together.
Very well. I'll take another break. When we come back, we'll stay away from the public sector. We've dealt with it. I know there's a lot to talk about. We are barely scratching the surface of the subject. But we'll move on to other issues that have come up, particularly the recommendations the communique is making, or the dialogue has made, with the IMF conditionalities in the backdrop. I want to see where you meet the IMF, where you differ from the IMF, and what the government could be doing about this. Don't go away. We're still discussing the aftermath of the National Economic Dialogue. With me is the chairman of the dialogue, Dr. Ishmael Yamson. We've been talking about public sector reforms, good corporate governance, and corruption, dealing with corruption. We've dealt into a number of areas. If you missed it, just scroll back and then watch the rest of the conversation that you have missed. But let's get right onto it, Doc. Before we went on the break, we were talking about some public sector reforms, and I did say that we won't come back to it anymore. So let's move away from that, and then look at the recommendations from the communique, the IMF conditionalities. It would seem there are certain areas that you agree with the IMF in terms of the IMF is asking for fiscal responsibility. The communique is also recommending same. However, on a subject like managing debt, increasing revenue in the form of tax hikes, your communique does not recommend same.
Yeah.
You don't recommend.
Is it absent, or we didn't recommend?
You know, you didn't. It's absent in it. I mean, you don't recommend. Of course, you are asking for revenue to be increased by cutting down expenditure, but unlike the IMF, which is looking for 58% in electricity, for instance, electricity tariff, the communique is quiet on those things.
Okay.
So I want to understand, how does the communique take into consideration the IMF program that we are in at the moment?
You know, the IMF will always tell you that they haven't imposed any conditionalities on anybody.
Really?
Of course, and it is true. You were indisciplined. You got into debt, you became insolvent, and you went to them to borrow money. So if you go and borrow somebody's money, he will give you his terms, isn't it? So why do we call it conditionalities? We knew what we had to do, we refused to do what we had to do, and now we are in trouble. Then we go to somebody to bail us out, and we are accusing the person for saying, go and discipline yourself.
Of pulling strings.
No. For me, we agree with the IMF on two things.
Right.
That our leadership must stand up for fiscal responsibility and fiscal discipline. Right. We just haven't been disciplined enough in managing our fiscal environment. The same with the monetary policy. Now, if then we come to Which side of it that you are just talking about?
In terms of revenue generation or increasing revenue.
Now, they say in the agreement, put it that way, that we should raise tax about 58%. Is that right? I don't think anybody would ever do that. You know what happened in Kenya? They had to roll back very fast. I think that, and I'm absolutely sure that the Ministry of Finance and all the negotiators on the Ghana side accept the reality. And the IMF themselves accept the reality that, yes, there are things that need to be done, but they cannot be done tomorrow. We need time to do things properly. So we don't also undermine the stability of the country.
Right. Thank you so much for talking to us. And thank you too for watching. If you missed the episode, like I always say, you find it on our socials and on YouTube. You'll also find some extras that we couldn't put on television there. So make sure you find our YouTube page, TV3 Ghana or 3 News on YouTube, obviously. I'm Keminni Amanor, and this is Hot Issues. Bye-bye.